everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome to check-in. We wanted to see how you were doing in the first week, see if you got through some of your questions. Did it make you think a little bit?
Yeah, how is that self deep dive going with your own health, right? And as Mel broke it down last week, we did sort of 3 main areas that we're really noticing and talking about the blood sugar levels and the spikes and the
Insulin,
glucose
the
and
stuff.
insulin. All that stuff I want to like pretend doesn't exist, right? But that doesn't make it go away.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we thought this week would be a little bit interesting to take a look at, you know, kind of what the world, how the world looks at some of this stuff. If you were to go to your GP or allopathic, right, sort of medicine, versus maybe going a different route, an alternative route, seeing a naturopath, maybe getting some blood analysis done. Mel does the special blood labs. So I started by
the functional route. Yeah, the functional.
Yeah. And okay, so I did a little Google search on what is your normal blood sugar. So I'm just going to read it to you. Clearly, I haven't memorized this. If you had a fasting blood glucose test, a level between 70 and 100 mg.
Milligrams per deciliter. That's the
you.
US standard. Everywhere else in the world uses.
Okay. Oh, the Canadian one, is that right?
Yeah.
Or the everywhere else?
Everywhere else. Like
the 3.9 and 5.6. I'm learning.
And that's millimoles per liter.
Okay, millimoles per
Right.
liter. Yeah, learning. Okay. So that's what they consider normal, right? That's, if you Google it, that's what's considered normal.
Right.
And if you had a random blood glucose test, a normal result depends on when you last ate. Right? Sometimes they tell you to fast or whatever, right? So most of the time, the blood glucose level will be 125
milligrams
megalodons
per deciliter.
That's my children talking in my head. or lower, right?
Right, which is 6.9 millimoles per liter. So that's in our world. And again, that's if you prick your finger with the standard. Oh, I was going to bring a kit to show and I forgot. But you know that you can get the little kits from the pharmacy.
Tips and tools.
Tips and tools, yeah. And you prick your finger with it and blood comes out and the stick draws it out and it reads it on the little meter and that's what you would get. They're saying 6.9 or lower is fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then when it comes to your normal fasting insulin level.
Insulin, yeah.
They say that the reference ranges are quite broad. 2.6 to 24, that is big, 0.9
microliter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But research has correlated fasting insulin levels over 7 as being associated with a significant increase in future risk of metabolic syndrome and type 2 diabetes.
That's right. So again, these ranges in the allopathic or the standard care that you would receive from your doctor, you know, your family physician or whatever, that the range is much more broad, right? So in a functional world or in most of the alternative worlds of looking at blood sugar, the range is tighter. It's a smaller range. So that gives you more of a buffer on each side. So the side that we want to be on, that means that when the functional person sees that the numbers are headed in that direction, they're going to say, we don't want to get to this point, versus allopathically, generally they'll tell you, oh, you're okay. Oh, you're pre-diabetic.
So that reminds me of like red flag versus pink flag, right? I was told that when I was, you know, having a home water birth. They're like, we don't let it get to the red flag. If we see a pink flag, we're already, you know, moving forward. So.
Right. So, and again, in the functional world, that's what they try to do because they want to turn you around and head you back down the road versus telling you, okay, you're fine. Oh, you're diabetic. Now you have to start taking metformin or other things.
Right.
And unfortunately, the way a lot of the systems work now is that's kind of how they've been doing it for so long that they don't really talk enough about, like there might be, if you're pre-diabetic, then they probably talk to you a little bit about, oh, maybe you should look at what you're eating and that sort of thing. But there's so many things you can really do. And again, if you're looking at a smaller range, the functional range, then you have a bigger area to say, okay, turn yourself around because we don't want to get into the functional range. We definitely don't want to get into the allopathic range of their numbers, because to us that's already very diabetic. Even the pre-diabetic range is kind of diabetic. So
I was going to say, I found it interesting as well how you told me how, you know, what was decades ago was the norm has now obviously increased as the population has got a lot less healthy, right?
They do change I think it's the mean or the median, or so they change it according to where the population is at large
with their health
within that time period. So that can affect it as well. And we don't want to. We know that levels are not well at certain points, and if you get past a certain point, then the insulin just has no idea what's going on. Your pancreas then just says, oh, I'm exhausted, that's it, I'm done, tapping out. We don't want to get to that point, because then you are dependent on insulin, which the pharma world loves that, but we don't. That's very expensive.
Who wants to live like that, right?
No, it's not good. It comes with all kinds of other problems. So if we can avoid that, let's do it, right?
Yeah. And in general, our whole society has moved the marker, right? Because we are a lot less healthy. Just statistically, when you look at the type of whole foods we ate decades and decades ago, and what was in the foods versus what's being put in the foods now to make it last longer on the shelf, or to make that, strawberry nice and big and plump, what have they added to it, right? So all those things we don't think about. Yeah.
But again, our bodies are so incredible, and when we provide the right environment, like food, hydration, fresh air, movement, laughter, social time, limiting our stressors, and then we just see positive results. So we can turn almost anything around when we are really nurturing the right environment for our body. So that's the good news.
Yay.
Right?
Did you want to go into a little bit about how some of the testing that you do shows a little bit more specific? I know you just said the general, but
sure. So again, there's all kinds of stages of different devices you can get and things that you can pay for.
Tests.
But yeah, if you want to start from ground zero and not, pay for anything, well, then you can just check your pulse. It's a way to sort of figure out what your body is doing depending on what you're eating. So you need to get a good baseline, first of all. That's right. So you're going to start by taking your pulse maybe 2 or 3 times in a day, just to get, what is it doing? And always when you're just sitting still, not when you just came in with a load of groceries and your heart's going a little erratically. Always, you've been sitting for 5 or 10 minutes. Oh, I'm going to take my pulse now. So I'm going to just check
resting heart rate.
Yeah, resting heart rate. And so do that a few times, see what it is, calculate it out over that minute, and get an average, and then you have a base, right? Now I know in this period of time, this is what my average resting heart rate was. And then when you eat a meal, check it right before you eat, and then check it maybe 5 or 10 minutes after you've eaten, see what's happening. Because if your body's reacting to a particular food, often it will increase your heart rate as well, right? Your heart has to work a little bit harder too. So if the more in tune you get with your body, the easier this will become. And you just check your pulse after having, a treat, or these things that you're like, oh, I shouldn't be having that. You'll notice often that your pulse rate will change. So that's one way to do it without making, all you have to do is take your pulse. So it's not really
the home version.
That's right, the home version, the simple, cheap, economy version. Then it doesn't work for everyone, but it's if you're willing to do that and really sort of become sensitive to your body, then you'll be able to take it just that way. Another option is to get that blood testing kit from the pharmacy, and in Canada anyway, we actually get the meter for free. You buy the strips in a package. That's what costs you money. So again, you're taking you're pricking your finger before a meal, after a meal, and then we want to find a peak point for your blood sugar, because we all have a different peak point after eating. And so once you find your peak point, then you only have to do it at that point to find out what your blood sugar is at after you've had any array of things. So then you'll know how your body is reacting to such things. by taking it at that peak point. So that's another way that you can really figure out what your body's doing and maybe what to stay away from or what you have to change, or damn, that's really high, I'm gonna have to go for a run quickly to get that sugar down, because that's one way that you can really utilize what you just put in. If you're like, oh, it's my friend's birthday, she made a chocolate cake, I'm gonna have a piece of that chocolate cake. Well, guess what? You can then say, okay, now we're all going for a walk. You go for a brisk walk to try and use some of that up, or we're all gonna do 100 squats so that we use some of those sugars so it's not spiking and we're not degrading our eyes and we're not putting strain on our cardiovascular, because that calories are meant to be used. That's why we're taking them in, right? So if we do have a treat or we ate too much or something like that, or just generally it's a good practice. But definitely when we're doing something like that, it's a good way to sort of mitigate that spike that we don't want to get.
Love that.
Yeah. So the next step up, the Cadillac version of that.
Is that still a fancy car nowadays?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not a car person. But the
Ferrari.
The Ferrari of the blood testing world would be in your what's called a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor. So that's the thing. There's probably commercials on TV and whatever. Usually put it on the back. It's like a disc with a micro pin in it. And you stick that, it's got a sticky bit on it, and you put that on the back of your arm, and you put a Band-Aid or something else over it to help it not to fall off. And you keep it on for 2 weeks at a time. And then it connects to your phone, and then all you do is wave it over. I feel stressed. So you can do it anytime, and it is really convenient for sure. It does cost, a little bit more. Mind you, when you're finding your timing on your strips, that can be expensive as well, because you need more strips to know when your peak point is.
It's like a digital version,
right? And it's only the one needle, which is a micro needle, so it's very fine.
Like a
lot of people barely feel it. So then it's in there. Then you don't have to be pricking your fingers all the time either. So there's goods and bads. You have to weigh that out for yourself. But then literally you can check when you're stressed. What does it do after I work out too hard? What does it do after a good, nice brisk walk? What's it doing after a particular food?
Iced coffee.
Yes, like all of these things, you can easily find out so if you're only doing it for say 1 or 2 cycles, that's a month, then you will have a really good idea of what your body's doing. So don't change anything maybe, and just write down all of the things that how your body responds in that month, and you'll have a really good idea. So it's not something you necessarily have to do forever. If you get an idea of how to handle your body, how your body's handling other things, then you can do it for a short period of time, get a grip on that and make those changes. And then you could always check back in, in 6 months and see how your body's doing. Is it still having, because we all change. Change is constant. So,
talked about that.
Yeah, change is constant. So it's something that, you might be allergic to blueberries and you react to 2 blueberries. But in 6 months, when you're taking that heavy load off your body and you're giving it a rest and treating it properly and giving it proper nutrition, those blueberries or whatever it was that was a little, tickly for you or sensitive, that might go away. It might just be that your bucket, again, we've talked about this before. I talk about a bucket is your health, and every time you put a drop of something in it, it fills it up, and at some point that bucket's gonna be filled over, right? And at that point, that might come out as psoriasis, that might come out as diabetes, that might come out as thinning hair, that might come out as a variety of things. But once you lower the level in that bucket again, your body can compensate better for a variety of things. So,
as we say, before we wrap it up for this week, are you able as well just to explain kind of the difference, what a general practitioner, doctor, allopathic medicine would look at when, their blood test versus when people would send a blood lab to you and you're looking for specific markers, and just that little bit more detail that you would be able to go into?
Right. Okay. So again, when a doctor generally gets back blood work and they might have done fasting insulin, they might have done A1C, which is another good marker, but there's usually the only 2 that they do. They rarely do fasting insulin unless you already have a blood sugar problem. But what they do is they say, are you in this range? If you're not in that range, then you don't get a call from them, right? They don't ever call you to check on you and say, hey, yeah, I got that back in. And,
well, they might say it's all good.
right.
Don't worry about it.
But usually you don't get a call for that. Usually you only get a call if there's something not good. So they're very busy. They're overworked. They only get paid for certain things. So there is little
It's
time.
limited.
Right. They don't do that connection time anymore. There's no chit chat and stuff for most of them. So you don't get that call to say, hey, you know what? It's not bad. Maybe you should look at this or that. Like, there's just no time for that.
Or
for most
the
of them.
affiliation, like, I see this, that might be why this has happened to
Right, the
you, like the
association,
association,
yeah.
sorry, because you do that a lot. You associate, that,
Yeah,
and it
that's-
makes sense. You connect the dots, really.
Yeah, it's something to really think about, right? Like, I mean, why not look at it? If it's not a connection, well, then you don't have to worry about it. But why not take the moment to figure that out, right?
Yeah.
So on a lab, what that I would get, generally you're looking through the lab work. Again, I'm using functional ranges, so it's a tighter range. And also, I use a program as well, which takes other markers and shows your inflammation markers and your lipid markers along with the 1 or 2 glucose markers that they probably took instead of the 10 that you could get. And it weighs it balances it out because of these other markers that might be associated as well. So if your lipids are high, then and your A1C is high, well, they're going to go, well, there's a bigger chance that you might have blood sugar dysregulation because of the correlation of the two versus generally an allopathic doctor is just looking line by line. So, okay, lipids, oh, well, that one's high, but all the rest are fine. A1C is fine. Like, so they're not
Connecting the dots.
They're not connecting the dots in the same way. And again, they don't pay for these other programs. They're limited in their, who knows what their regulations are as well.
And they
there's
also
all
have a
kinds of
vast
things.
practice range, right? They're
Yeah.
also dealing with a broken arm and, somebody who's
absolutely.
something else. So this is very specific and
Yes.
specialized
That's right.
into breaking down the blood work, which I love how you do that, and always like, well, this will associate with this, and I know.
Yeah, I think it's
Connecting the dots is
yeah.
important, right? If you want to get the actual overview.
Yeah, I think it's a great visual, and I think it's so important for us if we want to keep our health in check.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Which we do.
which we do, we should anyway. It
Speaking
does
of
help
checks,
us.
that was our check-in, right?
That was our check-in.
So we hope that you will continue checking in with your body, whether that means doing some of the things Mel just mentioned. We have a whole whack of tips and tools to bring to your attention next week in our Tips and Tools Week. But keep doing that deep dive, answering your coaching questions, getting help and support where you need it, especially your health. It's worth it. You're worth it, right?
That's right.
It's a big one.
That's right. We only get one body, so if we want to be here for a period of time, let's do what we can for it.
Let's do some cleaning
That's right.
on the inside.
Not only cleaning the house, cleaning this house.
It's like we shower on the outside, let's clean
Shower
the
the
inside.
inside.
Yeah.
You got it. You
All
got
right.
it.
Okay. We'll see you next week for more tips and
Ciao.
tools.